This is a very personal question, and I thank you for writing it in, and I hope I offer some insight that's useful, not just interesting. Why do Bochurim fry out? As a Bochur myself, what can I do to help? The simplest reason Bochurim fry out is because of Yetzer Hara. The tests that the boys face today are unprecedented. Everybody knows it. And too many of the boys are carrying around smartphones, which they shouldn't be. And some of them either they have no blocks or they know how to get around the blocks. And they just think it's benign, it's parev, I'm just going to enjoy myself a little bit. Or even if it's not benign, they don't see the consequences. But here's the fact. It says in Achei Temimim, it's brought in Chassidus, that fire and water cannot cohabit. Taivas and Avedas Hashem cannot cohabit, even if it's Taivas Heter. Let alone if it crosses over from Taivas Heter to Taivas Heter. Is it? So the number one reason, the simplest reason why Bochurim fry out is because they numb themselves to Tahara and to Kedusha and to Ruchnius by an involvement in other things. And they don't necessarily appreciate the long-term effects. This is the simplest reason, and probably the least likely. A more complicated reason for why a Bochurim will fry out is because he doesn't feel purpose in yeshiva. And the number one reason a Bochurim doesn't feel purpose in yeshiva is either because he can't do what yeshiva expects of him, which is learn, mostly, or he doesn't find purpose in learning in yeshiva. It doesn't work for him. So whether his failing in appreciating the yeshiva is because he cannot learn, or his failing to appreciate yeshiva because he doesn't value his learning, so the yeshiva experience becomes empty, becomes depressing. And again, it's the same thing. It doesn't happen in a moment. It happens slowly. Spending so much of your time involved in something that's not productive can be very, very destructive to a person. This is a second basic reason why people fry out. And the third reason, which is probably the most likely, is because there's trauma of some sort. Either the trauma comes from the home, or the trauma comes from the school, or the trauma comes from both. Pain, when it's unaddressed, festers, it sits there. And I guess the way to articulate it is, pain diminishes our will. It takes away our strength. And to be a Yid, and to be a Bocher, and to be a Yeshiva Bocher, and to be a Chassidish Yeshiva Bocher requires enormous will. It's an uphill battle. And these kinds of pain suck the life out of a person, and they give them no koyach. And on the outside, they may acting as if they're rebelling, but essentially they're unable to do what, let's say, they know they need to do, and they're simply not able to do it. And if it's not addressed, over time it gets worse and worse. The fourth reason Bochurim fry out, and this is probably the least likely and the least common, but it does exist, is that some neshamas just have rebellion in their soul. They just have in their very core to rebel against everything that's right or everything that they're raised with. And they just have a very contrary nature. Whatever you give them, they fight against. Whatever they know, whatever's familiar, they have to rebel against. And this is how it ends, oftentimes. So I've just listed 4 bases for why Bochurim fry out. The first is taiva. The second is failure in yeshiva. The third, which is probably the most frequent and likely, is trauma. And the fourth is because they should have an unusual personality in Yetzer Hara. Now, as a Bocher myself, what can I do to help? Each one of these 4 dilemma, each one of these 4 circumstances needs a different solution. And I'm not going to do this all in one sitting. I'm going to do this in 2 entries, but I'm just going to say one thing right now. The number one basis for the success of any person in life is embracing the ethic of hard work. Any person who works hard will be a success. Even if they're working hard at something extraneous, but if they're working hard with complete dedication, they're not wasting their time, they're not wasting themselves, and they will find success. This may sound very inappropriate, but even a person who's dedicated to physical exercise, but he doesn't just do it a little, but he does it to the point where it's consuming, at least he's constructive. He's not hating himself. I don't think that's the life of a yeshiva bacher, certainly not of a Chassidish bacher, but the worst is not work, is wasting away. Now the way life works is that when you have to earn a living, you work. And the way life works for a student, for the most part, is you don't have to earn a living. So the motivation for work is idealistic. The motivation for work, until you have to actually earn bread, is because the work has value. In other words, the reason I'm working is not because I want to earn money so I can buy something, which is, as the Rebbe said once in the Fabringen, in America, Geld is Egel HaZohav, we worship money. For a student who's working not for money, the motivation has to be much more idealistic. And it's very hard. Unless you're good at it, unless you're self-motivated, unless your home is very, very supportive of it. But this is really the ultimate answer to the question across the board, is hard work. Any boy who goes to yeshiva, I don't care how intelligent or unintelligent he is, if he works, will succeed. Some more, some less. And I would agree that along with the work needs to be guidance. You can't just work by yourself. Someone has to give you direction. And one of the hardest things in the world today is that when you are working hard and you're taking direction from someone older and wiser and more experienced than yourself, you actually follow it. But if you follow it, Hashem will help. And I believe this beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the answer to so many problems in our civilization in all areas is that people have to work hard. I just went to the doctor and we talked about a person who's suffering from all kinds of immune issues, and he said the answer is exercise. Work. Kids are almost reared to be lazy. We don't begin to expect things from our children until they're 7 or 8 years old, 6 years old for sure. And we spoil them, we entertain them, and we somehow think that this is good parenting. Now, we're not changing America in a minute, and you can't be a maverick. It's very, very hard to fight against the whole world and raise successful and normal, healthy children. But the society, the culture in which we live, believes that people are meant to find ways of giving themselves pleasure and entertainment. And it's a categorical mistake. Every civilization's success is based on hard work. Entertainment has to support hard work, meaning I can take a break and entertain myself so that I can have more motivation to work. But if the purpose of work is to be entertained, it's a tragic society, it's a tragic civilization, and it's unsustainable. And in our culture, the first place you see this is in people who work not to make money, which are students. So unless they know themselves exactly what they want and why they want it, it's very hard for them to be motivated. And a Chassidish bacher's motivation is the Rebbe. A Chassidish motivation is Chassidus. A Chassidish bacher's motivation is the Eibishter. And he has to work. You can't just be entertained and enjoy Chassidus. You have to work. In my next segment, I'll address the 4 particulars that I talked about.